ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे
वन्दे
गुरुपरम्पराम्
गुरुपरम्पराम्।
ॐ सहनौ सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु
विद्विषावहै ॐ
ॐ
शान्ति
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 शान्तिः
शान्तिः।
ॐ तत्सत् ॐ नमः शिवाय. So we had completed the chapter 1, chapter 2 and chapter 3 of the Mandukya Upanishad and Karikas. And in the first 3 chapters, what was the essential teaching? Anybody? No?
First one was Agama Prakaranam.
Yes.
The second one was Vaithatya Prakaranam.
Yes.
Third was Advaitam.
Okay. But if you look at all the 3 chapters, the essential teaching was only one. Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, Jivo Brahma Eva Naparaha. Right?
Yes.
And if you look at it, the first chapter, of course, was the Upanishad, mostly the Upanishad and a few Karikas. The second chapter, which you said correctly, Vaithatya Prakaranam, was establishing Jagan Mithya. Vaithatyam means Mithya. So, second chapter established Jagan Mithya. And the third chapter, which was Advaita Prakaranam, it established Brahma Satyam. So, Jagan Mithya, Brahma Satyam has been established. Okay, what is left? Jivo Brahma na paraha, which has to be converted into Aham Brahma na paraha. I and Brahman are not different. Now, when you know that Brahma Satyam and Jagan is Mithya, and you have been told that Jiva Brahma na paraha, why is it that some of us, in fact, most of us, we fail to convert that Jivo Brahma na paraha into Aham Brahma na paraha? Right? Which means if you have failed that conversion, if you are unable to, you know, say with conviction that yes, I and Brahman are not different, then either Jagan Mithya was not convincing enough, or Brahma Satyam was not convincing enough, or Jivo Brahmaivana Paraha was not convincing enough. And sometimes all 3 may not be convincing. Now, if there is lack of conviction, then this jnanam is ridden with doubts. So in Sanskrit we call it samshaya sahita jnanam. Jnanam along with doubts. And jnanam along with doubts is as good as ignorance, is as good as ajnanam. And therefore Shastram wants to ensure that the methodology is presented to eliminate all the possible doubts. Only when all the doubts are eliminated will the jnana phalam, the fruits of knowledge, which is that aham brahma na paraha, that will be available only after all the doubts have been eliminated. Right? Now, therefore, the first 3 chapters of this text were predominantly Sravanam chapters. Right? Though, of course, during the last section of chapter 3, we also discussed Nididhyasanam. So most of the 3 chapters are Shravanam. Partially we have discussed Nididhyasanam. And therefore this 4th chapter is going to concentrate on the very, very important Mananam part of the Vedantic study. Mananam means what? Handling all the doubts. Okay. Now, sometimes, we may not be convinced of what Shastra is saying, but we may not be able to um, vocalize our doubts. We may not be able to present our doubts in a rational form to anybody. Therefore, there is a tradition that other philosophers, other systems, other darshanas have raised doubts about Vedanta also. And if you look at some of the other darshanas and look at the doubts that they are presenting, some part of our doubts can be clarified. Now, when you look at other darshanas, we know that the darshanas meaning the philosophical viewpoints, the schools of philosophies can be broadly classified into two. One is predominantly, not predominantly, one is only logic based philosophy, only based on logic. So that is called Tarka darshanas or Tarka Matra darshanas. Matram indicating only. Therefore, Tarka Matram darshanas are basically schools of thought which rely only upon logic. And therefore, they do not accept the Veda Pramanam. Therefore, these Tarka darshanas are called Nastikas, Nastik darshanani, atheistic philosophies. What are they? Jaina Matam is one basic one. Who is the originator of the Jaina Matam? We have discussed it off and on.
Mahavir.
Mahavira. No, Vardhamana Mahavira?
Mahavira.
No. Vardhana Mahavira is like Shankaracharya. He is the reviver, not the originator. The originator is a rishi called Rishabhadeva. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, you will find that Rishabhadeva, who is the originator of Jaina Matam. And of course, when that fell into disuse, then Vardhamana Mahavira is supposed to be the reviver. He is not the originator. So that's one. Then there is Charavaka Matam. And then there are the four branches of Buddhism. So Jainam, Charvakam, and four Buddhistic branches. They constitute six Nastika philosophies. Right? And they are Tarka Matram philosophies, relying only upon Tarka. They do not accept Veda as Pramanam at all. Then the second group is called Tarka Pradhana Darshanani, which means Pradhanam means predominant. So predominantly accepting logic, but they also accept Veda Pramanam. So they are Astikas. But in their case, Tarka is, that is to say, logic is primary and Veda is secondary. So they interpret the Vedic statements in accordance with logic to suit the Tarka. Right? They will not say that this is the Vedic statement and let us get a stream of logic to support that statement. No, for them, the logic is primary and therefore all interpretations are based on primary logic. And what are they? These darshananis, they are four. Sankhya Matam. Who is the originator of Sankhya? Your advanced student.
Kapila Muni.
Kapila Muni. Yoga Matam. Who is originator? Everybody knows.
Patanjali.
Nyaya Matam. Gautama. And Gautama Muni. And Vaisheshika Matam, which is Kanada Muni. Okay, so these names you must know. Kapila Muni, Sankhya. Patanjali, Yoga. Gautama Muni, Nyaya. Vaisheshika is Kanada. So these are all people who believe in the scriptures and therefore they are all Astika Matams. Right? Now, those six plus these four, these are the 10 schools of philosophy. And these 10 darshanas, they attack Vedanta. And they will raise various doubts. And if we are not successful in raising doubts, it is always a good idea to look at the doubts raised by other people. Okay. And therefore, when they attack us, when anybody attacks us, the normal way of response is two. One is defense and one is offense, right? So in the same way, when any of these 10 darshanas, they criticize Advaita Vedanta, we also use these methods. We defend Vedanta and we go on the offensive also, wherein we take out their strong point, which is what? Logic. And we point out the logical defects in their arguments. Right. Also, our main flow when they talk about logic is that Vedanta is pramana. The validity of Vedanta is established by the fact that it is pramanam. And therefore, we do not use logic to either prove Vedanta or to disprove Vedanta. You know that one of the definitions of pramanam is that it cannot reveal, it reveals something which cannot be revealed by any other pramanam, and it cannot be negated by any other pramanam. Similarly, we say logic cannot negate Vedanta. And here the law itself is that what knowledge is given by one pramanam cannot be proved or disproved by another pramanam. Simply because tarka, logic, functions in one field and Vedanta is another pramanam functioning in another field. It's like trying to say that what my eyes see can be disproved by what my nose smells. The eye is functioning in the field of color and form. The nose is functioning in the field of smell. The fields are different. You cannot use them to prove or disprove. Okay. Now, Swami Chinmayananda once said that you cannot say that Vedanta is either logical, nor can you say that Vedanta is illogical. It's a very beautiful statement. What do you mean by saying that Vedanta is not logical? You mean that what is logical, what is provable by logic is logical. And we are saying Vedanta is pramanam. It cannot be proved by logic. Therefore, it is not logical. Conversely, what is disprovable by logic is illogical. Vedanta can never be proved or disproved by logic, and therefore it is neither logical nor illogical. And why don't we use logic? Because we know the limitations of logic. Logic depends upon data gathered by our sense organs. There is no data about Brahman which is possible for us to gather by sense organs. And therefore, do we discard logic completely? No. We use it, but we use it as what we call Shastra Sammata Tarkaha. Logic which is subservient to Vedanta. For us, the Upanishad is the primary means of knowledge. But we use Tarka, we use logic as a support to understand Vedanta. Okay, having said that, I also said that the fourth chapter of Mandukya is basically predominantly Mananam. And this chapter consists of 100 Karikas, of which roughly the first half, in the first 50, you will find that there is a refutation of other systems of philosophies, both Astika and Nastika. And in the next half, Gaudapada goes back to the Vedantic teaching. Now, this chapter is called Alata Santi Prakaranam. Right? Alata means a stick with a fire at one end. So in those days, it was a piece of cloth rolled at the end of a stick, and the cloth was dipped into oil and it was lit. So in today's, you can look at agarbatti, right? When the agarbatti is moved, what happens? Lighted agarbatti. When it is moved like that, what happens?
Seems to make a ring.
It seems to make a ring. So you perceive the ring, but is the ring really there? No. So this is the idea which is being conveyed. The movement, the supposed movement of Atma, in that supposed movement, we see lots of things, but they are not really there. Like the ring is not there when the agarbatti is moved. So with this, we'll come to the first Karika. Please unmute yourself. We will chant. ज्ञानेनाकाशकल्पेन
ज्ञानेनाकाशकल्पेन
धर्मान्यो गगनोपमान्
धर्मान्यो गगनोपमान्
ज्ञेया भिन्नेन सम्बुद्धः
ज्ञेया भिन्नेन
भिन्नेन
सम्बुद्धः
तं वन्दे द्विपदाम्बरम्
तं वन्दे द्विपदाम्बरम्.
Okay. So before we start on this chapter, there's a difference in this chapter and the other chapters. One of the main differences is that the construction of the verses of the Karikas is very, difficult construction, very obtuse construction. And a straightforward English translation, if you do, you will find that the English sentence will be very, very confusing, complex sentence. Therefore, without going too much, while I'll tell you the word meanings, we will more or less look at the flowing meaning also. The flowing meaning is better that way. Now, this first verse, if you look, in fact, the construction, the grammatical, constructions are so peculiar in this particular fourth chapter that if you read just the verses, you won't make sense of it at all. And therefore, you need, especially for this particular chapter, you need Shankaracharya's commentary, the Bhashyam, for us to be able to make sense. And therefore, while the word meanings I will explain just for the sake of understanding what the word means, essentially we are going to look at the message, the central message conveyed by each Karika. In fact, the first verse itself is a very difficult one. It is a namaskara to the originator who is called Sampradaya Kartuhu. Sampradaya Kartuhu means the originator of the Sampradaya. Which Sampradaya? Advaita Sampradaya. And who is the originator of Advaita Sampradaya?
Lord Shiva.
Yes. And
Did Vyasa?
He
no.
compiled it.
Remember that we have two basic prayers. So one is Lord Shiva in his avatara as Dakshina Murti. And that's why we chant Sadashiva Samarambha, Shankaracharya, Madhyama, all those things. Okay. The other Sampradaya, other lineage, the same teaching,
Vaishnava.
the same Advaitic teaching is given in two lineages. One is Sannyasi Sampradaya and one is the Grihastha
Vaishnavi.
Sampradaya. So Narayana. Narayana is
right.
the second one. What is the Narayana? Narayana's, we don't use it much. The prayer, anybody remembers? Narayanam Padma Bhuvam Vashishtam Shaktim Chitatputram Parasharam Cha Vyasam Shukham Gaudapadam Mahantam Govindam Yogindram Athasya Shishyam. Why is this important? This idea? Because though we are chanting Sadashiva, remember that Gaudapada, the author of the Karikas, is in the Narayana Parampara. Now, who is Narayana? So you look at the verse, you will see the last two words, Dvipadam Varam. Dvipadam means
2 feet.
2 feet. Dvipadam means the ones who have 2 feet. Varam means the greatest. So the greatest among the ones who have 2 feet is called Narayana. So you can say that as human beings, but basically you have to take it as a generalization. Palakshanam we call it for all jivas. And Shankaracharya in his commentary, in his Bhashyam, he connects this to the Gita 5th chapter and says you have to understand this Dvipadam Varam as Purushottamaha, Narayana. Because this Narayana is the Adi Guru who teaches what? Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam. Right? How will Narayana express that knowledge? He will say that Paramatma is equal to Jivatma. And therefore, this verse is to this Narayana who has the knowledge of that Aikyam, I bow down. This is the first message of this verse. The second message is that the knowledge of Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam is different from all conventional knowledge. In all conventional knowledge, there is a triputi, there is a triad. The Pramata, the Pramanam, and the Prameyam. What is that in English?
Knower, known, and knowledge.
Knower, known, instrument of knowledge.
Instrument of knowledge.
Pramanam is not knowledge. Pramanam is the instrument which gives you that knowledge, the text in this case. But here, so all conventional knowledge requires the knower, requires the known, and requires the instrument which will give you the knowledge. So if you are studying, let us say, the moon with a telescope, you are the Pramata, the moon is the Prameyam, and the telescope is your Praman. Right? Okay. Now, in the case of Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam, what is the difference from the normal conventional knowledge?
There is no pramata, no prameya.
The Pramata
And prameya are one.
Prameya are one. The Pramata is Jivatma, the Prameyam is Paramatma, therefore there is no difference at all. And therefore, this difference is not there for Narayana also, right? Because between Jivatma and Paramatma, there is only oneness, like space. Space never has any real divisions, but only seeming divisions. And he says, to that Paramatma who has the knowledge of this Aikyam, to that Paramatma, I give my prostrations. Right? So this is basically a Mangala sloka. Now, that might raise a question. Normally, Mangala slokas occur in the beginning. Why in the 4th chapter? So commentators say it is fine. Mangala slokas can be in the beginning, in the end, or in the middle. it is considered auspicious anywhere. Okay, now let's look at the exact words. Tam Dvipadam Varam Vande. I give my obeisances. I bow down to that Lord Purushottama, who is the superior among all two-legged ones. And what sort of Lord is he? Yaha Sambuddhaha. He knows Gagana Upamana Dharman. He knows the jivas who are like space, Gaganam. How does he know? Akasha Kalpena Jnanena, with a space like consciousness. Jnaya Bhinnena, which is not different from the object of knowledge, which is the jiva. Okay, so in English, I bow down to that Lord Purushottama who knows the jivas who are space like. He knows how, with his space like consciousness, he knows what, that the jivas are not different from him. You see, the construction is so clumsy, but the meaning is very simple. This jiva, this Paramatma, he knows he and the jiva are not different. Such a Paramatma who has that knowledge, I give my obeisances. Okay, any questions so far? All right. So we go to yes.
Acharya. So it
Yeah.
means that the space like thing, the space like consciousness, space knows jiva like space. It means that the space within is same as
This is why I said a very
outside.
clumsy construction, you know. He's saying basically that if you look at space as a divisible thing, with each
Yes,
jiva being a divided part of space, Paramatma knows that the division is false.
exactly. Yes.
So the construction is very clumsy. So I mean, you'll have to excuse me. I didn't make the verses. Okay. So we'll just try to interpret it to the best way we can.
Acharya. So Narayana is found in the Puranas, right? What reference do we have here in the
What Puranas?
the
Narayana is very much part of the Veda.
okay.
15th chapter is what? Purushottama.
Okay.
Uttama Purushaha. Uttama Purusha, you have to connect to this word. Dvipadam Varam.
Okay.
And don't think that what is found in the Puranas is different from what is found in the Veda. Why should you not think like that? The words may be different, the examples may be different, but the essence can never be different. Why?
Because Purana is based out on Vedas again, like in the story form.
Purana is presented in a story form to make it more understandable. But the teachings are exactly the same as in the Vedas. So whenever you tell a Puranic story to anybody, the best teacher is the best storyteller is one who has understood the Vedas so that there is no contradiction when he talks. A lot of people, if you notice, the acharyas who talk about the Puranas, they don't have a background of the Vedas. And therefore, you come up with all sort of confusion. Okay. Now we go to verse number 2. We will chant. Asparsha yogo vainama
स्पर्शयोगो वै
Yogo
नाम
Vainama
sarvasatva sukhohitaha
Sarvasatva
avivado viruddhascha
Avivado
विवादो
Viruddhascha
विरुद्धश्च
dveshitastam namamyaham.
Deshitastam
Deshitastam
Namamyaham.
namamyaham.
So, first let me give you the meanings. Asparsha yogo vainama. Right? So, this yoga, which yoga? This Advaita Jnanam is called Asparsha Yoga. This is what is now being given a new name. And what is that Asparsha Yoga? Sarva Sattva Sukha and Hitaha. Sarva Sattva Sukha Sarva Hitaha. So, Sarva Sattva Sukha means it is enjoyable to all beings, and Hitaha, it is beneficial to all beings. Then avivadaha, this Advaita Jnanam cannot be disputed. Aviruddhaha, it cannot be contradicted. Deshitaha, it is exactly what is revealed by the scriptures. And aham tam namami, I bow down to that asparsha yoga. This is the second Mangala sloka. First one was to the Lord. Second one is to the knowledge which is revealed by the Lord. Remember here, what is the asparsha yoga? It is the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. And why is it called asparshaha? Sparsha means connections. Right. Now, what are you? Now remember, when I say you, I am using the real meaning of you as Brahman. What are the connections which you make? Mithya connections, let us say. Because really Brahman cannot have any connections. All connections have to be Mithya. What are the connections which you make? There are two connections. One is Ahankara, body mind sense complex, and one is Mamakara. Once Ahankara comes into being, then Mamakara comes. This is mine, that is my wife, my child, my father, my parents. That is Mamakara. That comes after Ahankara comes. So that is called Sparshaha. And Asparsha Yogaha means this is that Jnanam. Here Yogaha means Jnanam. So this is that Asparsha Jnanam, because of which all these connections are dropped. Right. And therefore he is talking about the glories of Atma Jnanam. And every word of this Karika reveals that glory. Now let's look at the glories which it reveals. The first one is Asparsha Yoga. Atma Jnanam is called this because Brahman, or to use Mandukya's language, Turya Atma, Turyam, is got no connections, is Asangaha. It is timeless, without beyond time, with beyond space. It is the infinite reality from which time and space are born. But it by itself, Turiya Atma, Brahman, is not affected by time or space. And therefore, Asparsha, it has no connections at all. So, what about the Jagat, you might say? What about the universe? So, from the standpoint of Brahman, Jiva and Jagat are a Vyavaharika Satyam, a lower order of reality, because Brahman is Paramarthika Satyam. And any higher order of reality cannot have a relationship with a lower order of reality. Just like you can't have a relationship with a person in your dream. You, from the Vyavaharika Satyam, the transactional order of reality, cannot go and get married to the girl you found in the dream, which is a different level of reality. So, Itivai Namaha, he says, this Asparsha Yoga is a name used for Brahman. Brahman is called Asanga Atma. This Asparsha Yoga is a name used for that Brahman. That is the first description. The second description is Sarva Sattva Sukha. Sarva Sattva means, Sattva here means a Jiva, a living being. So Sarva Sattva means all living beings. Sukha. In this context, of course, since we are talking about Atma Jnanam, you can take Sattva as all living human beings. Right. Now, what gives pleasure? You have things like, children gives pleasure, sweets give pleasure, spouse gives pleasure. All these give ananda. So many things in the creation do give ananda. But if you remember, Krishna said, Dukkha yoni evate, chapter 5. All these are fine, but they are all wombs of dukkham, wombs of sorrow, which means any experienced ananda any ananda which is triggered by any object in this creation has always got three dosha. What are the three doshas? The three defects. Right?
The defect of acquisition,
Yes.
maintenance, and losing.
Yes. So defect, because you first have to acquire the pain in the acquisition, the pain in the maintenance, and the pain by losing it. So the three dosha is there. Because the same object which gives now joy now can give sorrow later, right? Either because you outgrow it or because it has gone away. What is the glory of the Atma? It gives only Ananda, Kevala Sukham. It doesn't have a mix up with sorrow at all. So this is the second glory. The third one is Hitaha. It is good for us, right? This Prayas versus Shreyas. This Atmajnanam is good for us because it is beneficial to us. Now, many objects give pleasure, but they are not good for you. Like lots of ice cream. They might give you pleasure, but they are not good for you. And Shankara writes in his commentary, there are many things that are pleasant, but they are not good. Kaschid Vishaya Upabhogaha Sukho Nahitaha. Lots of pleasant things are enjoyable and give Sukham, but Nahitaha. They are not good for you. Right? And of course, there are many things which are good for you, but not pleasant. Okay. And Vedanta here is Hitaha as well as Sukha. So Gaudapada is saying that this Vedanta overcomes that because not only is it good, it is also pleasant because it doesn't cause any future sorrow also. Then the fourth one is Avivadaha. So Vivada means a dispute or an argument. Avivada means this Advaita Jnanam, this Jivatma, Paramatma Jnanam, Aikyam is beyond all disputes. Now the point is, how can you say this? Because every darshana has some dispute with you. Right? Shankara says, look at it from the point of view of the Advaitin. If you are a Advaitin, what is your viewpoint? It's a very important point. If you are Advaitin, what is your viewpoint about other darshanas?
Dvaita.
Are you Advaitin or Advaitin? That you first decide.
Advaita.
If you are Advaitin, is there somebody different from you? If you say there is, then you are not Advaitin. So if you are Advaitin, from the point of that perspective that I am Advaitin, there is no one else. There are no other darshanas. So Shankara says there cannot be a contradictory view because there is nobody else who has a contradictory view. Nobody else exists who has a contradictory view. And the moment you say Advaitam exists, then you are accepting there is Dvaitam. You are no longer Advaitin. Okay, that is number one. Number two is Advaitam is revealed by Shastra Pramanam. All other views, contradictory views, are held by people who use darshanas which are predominantly Tarka Pramanam. Right? So any Pramanam other than Shastra Pramanam, can it talk about Atma?
No.
No. Any Pramanam other than Shastra Pramanam can talk only about Anatma. Only Shastram can talk about Atma. So where is the question of a different viewpoint? Subject matter itself is not the same in Advaitam and in non-Advaitic darshanas. Therefore, how can there be any contradictory views? This is the explanation of Avivadaha. beyond arguments. Then aviruddhascha, it is non-contradictory to any system. Now by now you know that every darshana, every philosophy has a particular theory of creation, right? And each theory of creation will contradict the other theory of creation. And Vedanta is very unique because it does not contradict any theory of creation. Why is that so?
Because nothing was created, Ajati.
Jativadaha. We don't have a theory of creation at all. We say there is no creation, neither a karanam nor a karyam. There is no space, there is no time. Ajativadaha. So every other system of philosophy deals with vyavaharika satyam, whereas Vedanta deals with paramarthika satyam. Right? That is why India welcomed all sort of people, Christianity, Islam, because all these people talk only about vyavaharika satyam, while Vedanta talks about paramarthika satyam. And therefore it is not correct to treat Advaitam as a darshana, because darshanas are all in the vyavaharika plane. Advaitam is the very basis because of which these darshanas can exist. It is the very substratum. And that's why the example of that agarbatti, each darshana is alataha, a pattern made by the agarbatti when it is turned. Now, what is the substratum? It is the glowing end of the agarbatti. That is Advaita alone. Behind all the darshanas, there is that glowing tip of the agarbatti. The returns may be different. Patterns are different, but the substratum, which is the reason for the existence of these patterns, that is that glowing tip of the agarbatti. That is one alone. Advaita alone. Then it is Deshitaha. So Deshitaha means revealed through Shastric teaching. Shastrena Upadishtaha is Deshitaha. So any idea of this teaching is gained only through studying with a competent guru. This is a knowledge that can never be independently sought by studying books or by meditation or by intuition, in samadhi, whatever. Right? This can be done only if you have a guru. Of course, there are people you will say who had this shastram without any guru. So if somebody says like that, for example, Ramana Maharishi, right? He had the teaching already, he had the knowledge already, he never had a guru. You have to recall the 6th chapter, Tatratam Buddhi Samyogam Labhate Pauro Dekika. What does it mean? Tatra, where in this verse, Tam Buddhi Sanyogam, his intellect is joined with what? Buddhihi Labhate Paurva Dehikam. That knowledge which was available in the previous janma. So it means that he had a guru in the previous janma. He was what is the word used by Krishna? Why didn't he become a jnani in the previous janma? What is the word used by Krishna?
Yoga Prashna.
Yoga Prashtaha. And therefore, when he was born again in a noble family, lineage, whatever, his mind was connected automatically to the knowledge which he had gained in the previous janma. Okay. No. So now we go to the third Karika, which we will chant. Utasya jatimichanti
Bhutasya jatimichanti
The
vadina kechidevahi
Vadina
अभूतस्या परे धीराः
अभूतस्य
Bhutasya pare
धीराः
dhiraha
विवदन्तः परस्परम्.
विवदन्तः
Vedanta
Vivadantas
परस्परम्
Paraskaram.
parasparam.
Okay, so parasparam vivadantaha, mutually arguing, kechid eva hi vadinaha, some disputants, icchanti, they postulate, jatim bhutasya, the birth of the existing one, apare dhiraha, other disputants, other thinkers, you have to add over here, jatim icchanti abhutasya. They postulate the birth of the non-existent one. So some people they talk about the birth of the existing one, and some people they talk about the birth of the non-existing one. Right? Suddenly have we shifted track? What are we talking about? So you have to go back to the last Karika. What is the word there we used for disputes?
अविवाद.
Avivadaha. So this is the explanation for the Avivadaha. What are the disputes that he referred to there? This is being mentioned here. Now these two ideas, birth of the existing one and birth of the non-existing one, we have seen below. They are two very powerful and popular darshanas, Sankhya philosophy and Nyaya philosophy. What is the theory of creation of Sankhya philosophy called?
Satkaryavad.
Satkaryavada. And similarly, the theory of creation of Nyaya philosophy is called Asat Karyavada. So remember that Sankhya philosophy talks about Kapila Muni, is the brainchild of Kapila Muni, interpretation of Kapila Muni. Asat Karyavada is Nyaya philosopher Gautama Muni. Let us see the differences. Let us try to understand these two differences. We take the example of a pot, ghata, being created out of clay, mrid. So pot has been created out of the clay. Now the question is, before the creation of the pot, did it exist in the clay or not? In other words, are you saying that when the pot was created, a pot which existed in the clay got created? Or are you going to say that a pot which did not exist in the clay got created? This is the question, right? So bhutasya vadinaha jatim icchanti. Vadinaha, the Sankhya philosophers, bhutasya jatim icchanti. They say that the pot existed in the clay and that existing pot alone is now manifest, and that is called the pot. This is called Satkaryavada. And then Appare Dhira, other philosophers, referring to Nyaya Vaisheshika philosophers, Abhutasya Jati Vichanti. They say the pot which created, which originates, did not exist in the clay. And therefore, Asat Karyavadaha it is called. And Gaudapada says, Parasparam Vivadantaha. The Sankhya philosopher negates the idea of the Nyaya philosopher, and the Nyaya philosopher negates the idea of the Sankhya philosopher, right? This Satkaryavadi gives a lot of very rigorous, well-presented arguments to negate Asatkaryavada. Similarly, the Asat Karyavada gives a lot of arguments to negate Sat Karyavada. The result is what? Both Sat Karyavada and Asat Karyavada get negated. Both the participants, they fall by the wayside. Who remains standing? The one who did not enter this fight at all. Who is that? Ajativadaha. There is no creation. So why should I fight about how it came about? Right? So Advaitin says, what is in front of us, don't call it world. It is only Brahman. What was before this world was born is Brahman. What is in front of us is Brahman. And what will be there after the world is gone is also Brahman. Where is the question of creation? So while you, O Satkaryavadis, are fighting with the Asatkaryavadis, Gaudapada says, I am having my coffee, sitting and watching the fight. That's the text of this particular Karika. Okay. Any questions? See, all the arguments and all, we have seen it before. We will see it again. In all the Shankara Bhashyams, these are presented. We have seen many of them in Taittiriya, we have many of them in Bhagavad Gita. There is no scope for repeating all of them. But you should recall. Okay. Any questions? All right. So we have a little time. Let us see if we can finish one more. We'll take Karika number 4. We'll chant. Bhutam na jayate kinchid.
Bhutam na jayate kinchit.
Abhutam naiva jayate.
Abhutam
Bhutam
na
naiva
jayate.
jayate.
Vivadanto dvaya heyavam.
Vidanto
Vidanto
dvaya
dvaya
evam.
Ajatim khyapayante te.
ajatim
Ajatim
dhyapayanti te.
te.
So he says that Bhutam na kinchit jayate. Bhutam is that which is already existing. An existing product can never be born. This is a statement made by whom? Nyayavashishika or Sankhya? This is a continuation of the last Karika.
Sankhya.
What does Sankhya say?
What
What is Sankhyavada? Satkaryavada. What does it say?
Satkaryavada.
What does it say?
Everything is there in a potential form.
Then that statement is not correct. Just now which you
Yes.
made. Right?
Yeah.
So Bhutam na jayate kinchita means an existing product can never be born, which means only the non-existent pot in the clay can be born. So this is Nyaya Vaisheshika. Right? It is already existent. How can it be born? And Abhutam Naiva Jayate. This is Sankhya philosopher. How can a non-existing thing ever be born? Right? A non-existent thing, how can it ever be born? This is what Sankhya philosopher says. Because a non-existent thing means something new is being created. And even Einstein said matter can never be created or destroyed. Therefore, on one hand, the Nyaya Vaisheshika says that existing product can never be born. And Sankhya philosopher says a non-existing product can never be born. And when you combine the two, what does it mean? The existing product can never be born. The non-existing product can never be born.
Nothing is born.
Nothing can ever be born, which is what Gaudapada says. I have been saying this all the time. Ajativada. Nothing ever is born. You're getting the flow. Now, also, we can have a look at the grammar part. Okay. I'll convert the whole thing into English. The grammar. When you say a non-existent pot is born, what is the subject? What is the verb?
Born.
Sorry?
Born
Is born.
No,
non
both. Tell me both. What is subject? What is verb?
non-existence is the subject.
Non-existent pot is subject.
Born is the verb.
Born is the verb. And when you say non-existent pot, is there a subject or is there no subject?
There is no subject.
There is no subject. So sentence is grammatically wrong because you are using a verb but not using a subject noun. So the sentence itself is illogical. And therefore he says, Vivadanta dvaya hevam. These sets of philosophers, they go on arguing and arguing, refuting the origination of the world. Okay. Now, dvaya here can be taken as two, Nyaya, Vaisheshika and Sankhya, or dvaya can be taken as anybody who is a Dvaitin, all Dvaitins, which is a larger interpretation because it includes all non-Advaita darshanas. Non-Advaita darshanas, all are included, right? And therefore, Gaudapada says, Ajatim kyapayanti te. Kyapayanti is meaning revealing. And therefore, all these people, when they're arguing, they don't realize, says Gaudapada, that actually they are saying, when you take all the arguments together, actually they are saying what I am saying, that there is no origination of the world at all. Where is the question of the pot coming into being? Because there is no substance called the pot. There is only clay. Previously there was clay. Now also there is clay. Nothing has arrived. What has arrived? A new word, pot, has been invented. That pot is just a word which is initiated by someone's tongue. Previously gold was there. Now chain is there, bangle is there, necklace is there. Similarly, world is also just a word. There is no origination of anything called world. Jagat is not born. Jivatma is not born. When Jivatma is not born, says Gaudapada, where is the question of rebirth? And when there is no question of rebirth, where is the question of moksha? And Gaudapada says the biggest samsara is that only. Your desire for moksha, that is the biggest sign of samsara. So with this, we'll stop for today. Any questions? All right. Thank you for your patience. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti
Shanti,
Shanti
shanti,
Shanti.
shanti.
Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Thank
Om
you,
Om Om.
Acharya ji.
Thank you, Acharya.